Falmouth Board of Selectmen, Monday, April 25th, 2016. And I'll invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item of business is a proclamation. Ms. Moffett?
Yes.
If you would read us a proclamation, please.
Whereas Michael Lopes was a former Lawrence High School of Falmouth basketball player who led the 1963 team to its first and only state championship. And whereas Michael Lopes' contributions to the school and town resulted in his being named to the Falmouth High School Basketball Hall of Fame. And whereas Michael Lopes' jersey, number 22, was retired and hung in the Lawrence High School gymnasium for many years. And whereas the Falmouth High School is honoring Michael Lopes on May 6, 2016 by rehanging his jersey in the new gymnasium. And whereas Michael Lopes further honored the town of Falmouth and Falmouth High School by having a successful career as an educator and a high school principal for over 30 years. Now therefore, we, Doug Jones, Susan Moran, Mary Pat Flynn, Rebecca Moffett, and Samuel Patterson, as selectmen of the town of Falmouth, do hereby declare and proclaim May 6, 2016 as Michael Lopes Day.
That's a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Congratulations. We'll look forward to the ceremony on May 6th at the high school. Okay, I have two announcements. First, that the Board of Selectmen has deliberated on the overall impact of the Zoning Board of Appeals decision to deny a special permit for the continued operation of Wind 1. The Selectmen have carefully weighed the impact of this decision and find on balance that the long-range environmental and fiscal impacts to the taxpayer of the town of Falmouth are too great to allow this decision to stand without an objective review of the merits by the court. We find it is in the community's best interest to protect this major public investment. Accordingly, the board voted this evening to file an appeal of Zoning Board Case 62-15. Next announcement is that I put on our agenda for May 9th a vote on whether we want to reconsider our early decision on the 8 Cousins special event request for July 5th. At that time, we can vote whether we want to reconsider or not. If we vote to reconsider it, I actually know that we'll have a new presentation from 8 Cousins. They're prepared if we vote to reconsider.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, there is someone here who requested that proclamation from Michael Lopes, and I wondered if we could just give him a moment to say something.
Sure.
Win Monroe?
Oh.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm Win Monroe, Precinct 7. I would just like to thank the selectmen for creating this proclamation, for approving this proclamation, and to say that on the day of May 6th in the evening, there's going to be an event at the Cape Verdean Club, which several of us have been working on to work on, at 6 o'clock in the evening, which is open to everyone in town. And we would welcome people to come to that, to meet Mike Lopes, and to talk about it. When I was a young man in Falmouth, I didn't know Michael Lopes. I didn't know about him because I was only here in the summertime. But I'm just delighted to see this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone who'd like to make public comment on an item that's not on our agenda for this evening? If so, please limit it to 2 minutes, and the whole public comment session will be limited to 10 minutes. Ms. Putnam?
Good evening, Rebecca Putnam, Precinct 9. I'm here to, I'd like to first off thank Mr. Jones and thank Mr. Patterson for being in favor of the 8 Cousins event. It's extremely important that we find other venues, and especially where 8 Cousins is being honored by such a organization on that evening, or that day, to allow the children to have something to do other than playing on their Nintendos and iPhones and iPads, especially where it's looking to be held July 5th, which is a time when there are a lot of families here, they should be able to attend such an honorable event. And I would hope that this board would consider for the kids to vote in favor of it, and for the businesses, since Main Street is supporting them in doing this. So it's not going to hurt anybody to allow them to have that event. So I would hope you would reconsider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Putnam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brent Putnam. Again, I'll echo what my wife said, and thank you, sir, and thank Mr. Patterson for your favorable vote with regards to the scholastic event at Eight Cousins. And I do hope that the board will give it positive consideration when it comes back before you. It is not often that a small local business such as Eight Cousins is honored by an organization as large and as well-known as Scholastic. So, again, thank you, and I hope you give it favorable consideration.
Anyone else? Yep.
Hello, Michael Hanlon, Cliffwood Lane. I just wanted to thank everyone who signed the petition and wrote emails to bring this event back into consideration for the May 9th meeting. And thank you all for reconsidering it. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. Our next item are the minutes of the meetings. We're going to have to go back to March 21st. We have the open session, Monday, March 21st. Mr. Patterson?
I have just several corrections.
Okay.
On page 4, midway down the page, there's the word seen instead of seed. Can be purchased off case because it is oyster seed, or
Okay.
and it sort of changes the meaning. On page 5,
Yep.
the fourth paragraph from the bottom, you have an acronym, ETMS, in the very last sentence. I think that really is emerging contaminants of concern. That's what the Board of Health is concerned about. And these are disinfectant products, byproducts they call them. Okay. And then on page 6, under item 4 at the top, near the top of the page, it's
If I may, I was going to say, I think they refer to them as CECs, contaminants of emerging concern.
concern?
Yeah, if that acronym is more appropriate.
well, I was saying emerging contaminants of concern, so okay, anyway.
It's a technical
It's
term,
a
she can
technical
look
Okay,
it up.
fine,
Yeah.
fine, then just leave it
CEC is a
as
technical term.
contaminants of concern, okay? Okay, then,
Page 6, item 4.
pardon me?
Page 6, item 4.
Page 6, item 4, second sentence, the town can look to contract for grinder pump services for the town, pay a basic available cost plus normal services, plus abuse, and then, I'm sorry, the next sentence says estimated total cost is $250,000 to $300,000. That's not thousands, it's $250 to $350 per year.
No.
That's just, is this total?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. So, all right.
The
So
estimated
that's the
cost for the
total.
entire contract with the entire
Total
contract.
cost to the town, then.
Right.
Okay, got it. Well, maybe it should be worded that way, to the total cost to the town.
Well, it says for the town right above it, so
Okay, all right.
there's really no change.
All right, thanks, then we'll let it stand. And then on page 7, let's see, from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th paragraph, Ms. Flynn noted in decision, a decision will not be made by the election, and it says on 5/17, I think that should be really May of 2017, because it's not May 17th of this year, it's May of 2017.
No, I meant May 17th, which is the last day that Becky and I will be serving as selectmen, because the election is May 18th. So it's 5/17/16, it's probably more
Okay.
correct.
Then
If
let's
we
just-
put 5/17/16, that might clarify it.
Okay, sounds good. And, oh, and then there's one more on page 11. I think this is important. If you look under category, under section D, the third paragraph, very last line, it says, Verizon to come in with their, it should be FiOS service, F-I-O-S. And then again in the next phrase, FiOS, F-I-O-S. We're happier. Just to clarify the topic there. And then a name correction on page 12. Under all alcohol club entertainment, Kevin should be Clower, K-L-A-U-E-L, K-L-A-U-E-R, not Cloud. So I think those are important corrections to be made.
Well, then if we're going to add that, Luke Vos should be V-O-S-E. The next one, Pat Kean, I believe is K-E-O-G-H-N.
Good. Yeah.
And Melissa is Melissa O'Keefe.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Motion to approve with those corrections?
We have motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Monday, the March 28th meeting.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have some corrections to recommend.
Yep.
On page 5. In the middle of the page, estimated range in December for a field replacement at the high school site. There's no dollar sign for the 90 to 100,000, but so I think we should add that.
Okay.
If you go down to the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph from the bottom, last sentence, conservation is misspelled. You could just correct that. I guess that's a typo. I should just leave that out. And then in the last sentence on the page, it says the elevation and topography of the new proposed road would be roadway elevation that climbs from about 60, that should be feet, not degrees. At the beginning, goes down to 40 feet, and then back up to 70 feet.
That would be quite a road in degrees.
Indeed. On page 6, there are some typos that I can just provide to Jennifer,
Yep,
misspelled
that's fine.
words, and I'm not going to go over those, but the very last sentence, it should say, Ms. Little noted that the T-ticket members and others thought this site would be bad for the area given Route 28 instead of 20, and Sandwich Road. Let's see. And then if I, page 8, under number 10, second sentence, third sentence, workshops with, and I assume that's JS is Julian Suso, with Congressman Keating, spelled capital K, and that should be Massachusetts Rep. Tim Madden. Okay, just to kind of clear up some of the abbreviations there. And then on the last paragraph on that page, the last sentence, the warrant article before town meeting would authorize the Board of Selectmen, I think it should be, to negotiate a property lease to the Falmouth Housing Corp., FHC, contingent on receiving the required permits and verification of financial soundness of the development. The way it's abbreviated. Kind of doesn't provide any kind of contingents, any kind of conditions at all. So it would be my recommendation.
I thought those contingencies were in the warrant article.
Oh, it's okay then, if you want to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree. Negate that change.
Just leave it as is.
So other than the last, move approval with the changes.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. All right, we then have the minutes from the April 4th meeting. These are the meetings before town meeting.
I do have some suggested changes on page 2. It is a position number, item 3, the very first item at the top. Approve town manager applying to CPC to cover the cost of a housing coordinator. This is actually the title of the position. And then in the next sentence, the town manager may apply to CPC funding for the housing coordinator. Again,
Makes sense.
those are the only corrections I would have to do.
Motion to approve with those two changes.
Second,
I'm thinking, there are actually two positions.
Right.
One's the housing coordinator, and I forgot the title for the other one. Oh, that's different, that was the department head position. So that
Right.
wasn't part of this
No.
discussion.
Correct.
wasn't part of
Right,
CPC.
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So we need a second?
I second it.
Motion and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Then we have Tuesday, April 5th meeting.
I don't know whether, if I could, Mr. Chair, I don't know whether it's significant, I'll leave that to your discretion, but on 2, at the very top, Mr. Patterson reported that he went to the State House with a delegation, including Representative Sarah Peak, Representative David Vieira, and 12 Cape Cod selectmen and administrators, if we could add "and" in there, and met with Speaker DeLeo in support of the expansion of the local rooms options tax. Because we have a local rooms option tax, we want to expand that. So I think there's a significant difference in
Yep.
that word.
Motion for approval with that change?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. And now we have the executive session. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think we, at least I don't have the April 11th meetings in my packet.
Yeah, I have March 21st.
Right, we
Right.
only have the 28th and the 21st.
So in our agenda, we have April
Yeah,
11th,
the
but we don't,
28th.
we're not there. So the March 21st executive session minutes,
I move approval and to release.
this is dealing with firefighter's contract.
Second.
We have motion and second to approve and release. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none. And then March 28th,
Yes, for your consideration, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
In the, under the number 1 MGL C30, oh, this is sort of the 4th line where it says, from the bottom of that paragraph, the contract includes COLAs and steps, and I thought it was with no significant language changes.
no. Those are the changes we're making.
Those were significant, so it's correct the way it is.
But language changes are different from cost of living adjustments.
But the changes we add, actually are in the contracts, we're adding biweekly pay, we're prorating the vacation, and we're changing the sick leave.
Ah, okay, got it. Misunderstood.
Just to make it consistent with all the other contracts we have in town.
Yep. Then I would move approval to release.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve and release. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. And the April 11th minutes we'll have to hold on for another time. The next item of business are summary of actions. We have some licenses, approved request for a special one-day liquor license. This is the Compassionate Care ALS at Cinco de Mayo on Academy Lane. This is listed on our agenda last time, but we didn't have the application with us. Any questions?
Well, I would move approval.
Second.
Motion to approve. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next is the approved request for a special agricultural liquor license from Coastal Vineyards to be held at Falmouth Farmers Market at Marina Park. This would be on Thursdays from May 26th till October 6th.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and second, all those in favor,
Is there at any time that the wine beverages are open bottles as such in public, or you're buying, is there any alcohol at that point?
Absolutely. They're open bottles, they're actually having wine tasting, and they can pair for half an ounce of tastes.
There's restrictions on how much.
Okay.
Move approval?
I think we have motion and
We've already-
second.
yep,
already.
yes.
Just gotta vote.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Next is a request for a special one-day liquor license, also in Cinco de Mayo, for the Quicksall Taqueria. on Friday, May 6th, 2016. And we actually do have a question from the captain of the police department that maybe we can get an answer to. Actually, about the difference between gated, fenced, what exactly, and roped, as to what you're actually thinking about doing there. And also, the reason for this is that you're not open with your seasonal license. Is that correct?
Hi, I'm Beth Colt, and I own Quetzal Taqueria, and the reason is I would, let's see, the simplest way to describe it, like to have the right to be able to, on this one night, serve alcohol on the full area of shelves and property owned by me, rather than a limited area of property owned by me.
Okay. But you'll be open by then, with your seasonal license?
I will be open with my seasonal license, yes.
Okay. And is it expected to be roped off, fenced off? What are you planning to do?
I'm imagining roped off.
Okay.
But I'm flexible if there are other, if the police department would like something. I can't build a fence, but I can do something more.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
The police department's specific request, I'll just read it, would be to use temporary fencing or similar physical obstacle instead of rope.
Okay.
So it's, I get the impression it's something a little more structured than rope.
I will have to look into that. I will certainly consider canceling the event if the fencing is, if the elaborateness of the fencing does not justify the one night's event. So I will explore that.
And it's just one step above rope, I think, is the way I read it.
Okay. I'd be happy to maybe call them and ask them to get a little more specific about what they have in mind and try to meet their concerns.
It's Captain Reed.
Okay.
As long as it fits within the license of their description of fencing, whether it's fencing with woven rope, maybe something they accept, but.
Okay.
And it's fencing in quotes, so, I mean, it's not, you know,
I would
Yes.
like
move,
up to your,
I would move approval.
with those considerations.
Just approval, and I'm sure that they would work out.
Second.
I'd be happy to comply, and I will reach out to Captain Reed.
In the license, it does say the conditions are fence-off area where alcohol will be sold to consume.
Sure.
Proof of liquor liability insurance required, server to be tipsy, or equipment trained. So it's
Yep.
in the license already.
Great.
I was going to suggest you could call the DPW, because they sometimes use a kind of a plastic kind of.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
uh,
great.
That you just unroll and you use some metal posts,
secure
that you
it.
can pound in with a
I know
sledgehammer.
what you mean. I've
Okay.
seen that.
That's
Yeah,
probably
very
what-
inexpensive. That's
but-
probably what they mean.
But I think, the police department's concerns are people can easily pass under ropes. And
Absolutely.
we're looking for the probability
Containment.
of illegals,
Yep.
minors, excuse me.
And that type of fencing has been used at Marine Park on
Okay.
occasion, so it
Okay.
is definitely an
Great.
approved item.
Great.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
further discussion? All those in, I think we had a motion second.
I was a motion second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none. This is a copy of the letter from Captain Reed.
Okay.
And you can take that with you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next is application for a change of DBA. This is the Peking Palace of Falmouth Incorporated, doing business as Gourmet Garden
Yes.
for the applicant.
My name is Sharon Hong, I'm the manager of
You
Peking
can-
Palace
And this is the
And,
microphone picks up.
since 1984. So it's time to change the new name, and we're doing the hibachi. And so a new concept, rebranding, so we wanted to deviate. Can we? And regular customer already knows Peking Palace, but tourist customer, if they see the Peking Palace, they don't know it's hibachi. They only think it's Chinese. So we want to say sign, say Chinese and Japanese and hibachi and lunch. So we want to change the new sign and say Gourmet Garden.
And there are also some changes that are going on inside the building to prepare for that, is that
Our
correct?
inside is totally new renovate. It's going to be done in 1 week. It's totally new now, but we're just waiting for the inside.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
You won't be getting rid of all my favorite foods, all right?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. But a lot of customers request hibachi, and I think it's going to do well. Everybody's
exciting.
excited, yeah.
All right,
Inside is totally new now.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the application for a change of doing business as Gourmet Garden? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
None.
Thank you.
Under administrative orders, we have some petitions for installing conduits and handholds. Eversource, the first one is on Nickerson Street, east of Mara Vista Avenue in Falmouth. It's for one 4-inch conduit and one handhold.
I move approve. You want to do them as a group?
I was going to do all
Sure.
the first three as a group. The next is a 4-inch conduit and one handhold on Gunning Point Avenue, north of Sippowisset Road. And then approve Eversource Energy and Verizon to install one pole on Old Meeting House Road, south of Vibra Lane in East Falmouth.
I move approval of these three requests.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Next, we have it's 7:30, time for our hearing.
Right.
I tried, Dr. Reinfelder, I tried. So at 7:30 PM, we have a public hearing. This is on the application for transfer of all alcoholic common victual license, Muse Restaurant Group Incorporated, doing business as Paul's Pizza and Seafood. For the applicant, well, I'm reading the notification. Sorry, bear with me. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws is amended. The Muse Restaurant Group Incorporated, doing business as Paul's Pizza and Seafood, has applied for a transfer of ownership of an all-alcoholic restaurant license at 14 Benham Road, Falmouth, Mass. 02540. Their hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, April 25th, 2016, at 7:30 PM on the above application. Publication date Friday, April 15th, 2016. For the applicant, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I'm an attorney with Ament Law Firm here in Falmouth. Before I start, I'd like to thank Mr. Patterson for making a very crucial fix to the March 21st meeting minutes. It's very important we preserve this for posterity. I'm here tonight representing Muse Restaurant Group, and I'm joined by Peter Muse. Mr. Muse is under agreement to purchase Paul's Pizza from the current owners, PC's Incorporated. They've entered into a purchase and sale agreement with them, and a major contingent part of that is the transfer of the liquor license. So we're here before you tonight to seek the board's support for the transfer of the liquor license currently held by PC's Inc. to Muse Restaurant Group. In addition, we're also seeking for your allowance of the pledge of the license to Cape Cod Cooperative Bank, who's providing financing for the purchase. The transfer will allow Muse Restaurant Group to continue Paul's Pizza's over 50-year tradition here in Falmouth. And it will allow them to better meet and exceed the expectations and needs of their guests. Mr. Muse here will be the manager of record. He's worked in the hospitality industry for many years, the last 3 years as manager of the Quahog Republic here in Falmouth, and for the last 7 years here on Cape Cod. Previously, he also worked with the Boys and Girls Club of Mashpee and is a Falmouth native. He's tip certified. The staff as well will be tip certified. My understanding is most of, if not all, the longtime staff will be staying on past the transition. This will allow for continuity and the excellent food and service that Paul's has been accustomed to providing us. Peter's joined in this endeavor by his stepmother, Kitty Muse, who's here in the audience tonight. She's been a longtime employee of Paul's Pizza. They're very excited about taking over an institution that's been such a part of Falmouth for so many years, and they're looking to continue and improve that tradition. I, along with Mr. Muse, would be happy to address any questions that the board might have at this time.
Questions from the board?
I guess the pretty basic question is, do you expect to continue the same menu and service and hours and and general atmosphere of Paul's for all these years?
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think, basically when people have asked, the big question is you're not going to change the pizza, are you?
That's right, that would-
The vote is going to depend on that.
Right.
So answer that really carefully.
We certainly don't intend to make any changes like that. If anything, we are looking to expand the hours. So currently, they've been closed on Mondays and Tuesdays for quite some time. We are certainly exploring the option of whether or not it will be in our best interest to open on those days if we're going to be able to accordingly staff appropriately, as well as possibly staying open a little bit later as well. They currently close down between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. I don't know how many people have gone in at 8:35 and not being able to be seated. We'd like to extend that to maybe 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock. We certainly don't anticipate being a late night spot, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that we can stay open until 10 or 11 o'clock and continue to serve pizzas even later.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Ms. Buffett?
Are you going to have any type of entertainment?
No, ma'am.
And if there was ever a need for entertainment, we'd be back in front of you for an entertainment license.
Any other questions? Anyone from the public who'd like to speak on behalf of this application? Anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this application?
Motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The hearing is closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We haven't voted yet.
Yeah, we have to.
My job here is done, so I'm going to sit down.
Time to make your bets.
I move we
Motion for approval.
go ahead. Second.
I'm looking forward to the pizza being the same, so I'll agree with that also. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Now, congratulations. We look forward to it.
Can we get that to them before the next, 7:40? Thank you. Bye-bye.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Next hearing is an application for a shellfish aquaculture license. Scott Tennell, time is 7:40. I'll go ahead and read the public hearing notice, and it will be about that time when we're done with it. Falmouth Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing under Section 240-77 of the Wetland Regulations of the Falmouth zoning bylaw and Section 57 of Chapter 130 of the Massachusetts General Laws, the application of Scott A. Tynell of 163 Bay Road, North Falmouth, Mass. 02556, with Alexander J. Tynell and Michael A. Zolo for a shellfish aquaculture license. The application was received on April 7, 2016, in the office of the Board of Selectmen. The public hearing will be held on Monday, April 25, 2016, at 7:40 in the Selectmen's meeting room. The legal description is a shellfish aquaculture license for one location in Gansett Harbor, approximately 1,000 feet from shore adjacent to half-tide rock, containing approximately 5.9 acres. More specifically, to grow eastern oysters and northern quahogs in cages and soft mesh bags anchored to the bottom of the ocean, and will not raise more than 18 inches in height. A copy of the aquaculture license application is on file at the office of the Board of Selectmen. And actually, before, this was posted in Falmouth Enterprise on Friday, April 15th, and Friday, April 22nd, 2016. And before we actually start with the hearing, the shellfish, the aquaculture working committee did have its first meeting on Thursday evening. I know that Mr. Tynell was there. It was a very, very effective, positive working group. I will come up at our next board meeting and ask that we put a moratorium on licenses, future licenses, until that working group has done its job and be able to make some applications. But that certainly is not in effect and has no real relevance to this. But I just want to give the board a heads up as to how things are moving forward in that direction. Mr. Tynell, if you could describe in a little more detail what you're hoping to do.
Initially, we're looking to grow eastern oysters and quahogs. They would be initially bought a seed oyster, raised in an upweller to approximately quarter to half-inch size, then moved out into Gansett Harbor into a grow-out area. Bottom cages, mesh bags would be the method of containing them. Initially, that would be the focus of our our venture. However, you know, in the future, as things change, as opportunities change, you know, we hope to change with the possibilities out there. So this is a new venture for us. We're looking forward to it. Happy to answer any questions we can about this.
I'll remind the board and the public that the process is, it starts out with us, is first with this application, it then moves forward to Department of Fisheries, it then comes back also to our Conservation Commission, and then it'll come back to us again for approval. And so, time for some good initial questions. Ms. Moran?
I just was curious if you, what sort of opportunities you may have had to learn about such a venture.
Presently, I'm taking the Barnstable County Extension Aquaculture Program. I've lived on Rance Canal my whole life. I've spent more time swimming, floating, fishing, shell fishing, doing anything in the water there than, you know, than I can imagine. It just, I grew up there, I love it. So from a practical point of view, no, I've never raised oysters. However, between the classwork, having, you know, just a love for the water there, and actually when I was going to school, I was a biology major until I got sidetracked with the marriage and kids. I had hoped to go into aquaculture, so I'm taking the long route back to my first dreams, and you know, along with that, Mike is presently down at the Roger Williams College course for aquaculture. He's a certified paddy diver, experienced 40 to 60 foot dive boats. My son has also grown up his whole life on Rance Canal. He's got the business application, having gone to Babson. So the overlapping skill sets hopefully will be enough to get us started and grow into this venture.
Thank you.
Do you know how many farms are located near you?
The closest one would be the Ward Grant southwesterly. He's a little over 100 feet away from my closest corner to his closest, my closest side to his corner. The next over would be the Perini Grant that you just met on 2 weeks ago, and Paula went through here. I'm sorry, that was the Miller Grant, followed by the Perini Grant. So some of the thought in placing the site was that being near other sites, that area is already, you know, with boat traffic, with eelgrass, with moorings, there's a number of issues that are all kind of already been dealt with in that area. Coming out of Magansett Harbor, people don't usually hook to the inside and follow the shoreline other than kayaks, which probably aren't going to be a problem. We've talked to the harbor master. We said that, you know, we're happy to address any mooring issues. I plan on being a good neighbor. When I'm not out there, people on a boat are going to be my eyes. So, you know, I want to be good with them and have them happy that I'm a neighbor of theirs. And, you know, we don't want to do anything that's going to impair their enjoyment of the water.
And from the water, the only thing you'll see are the four corner buoys, is that correct?
That's, at the moment, that's the regulation. That's all you're going to see. Everything else is underwater.
Scott, this is outside the entrance of Rance Canal?
Outside the...
About how far, would you say?
Well, it's more over towards, when you get over towards Magansett Beach.
Towards Magansett.
All right, like I said, if you know where Half Tide Rock is, that's kind of the corner, and then we stretch from there towards the beach line and out into the harbor.
Okay.
However, where the lane of traffic is coming out of Magansett Harbor, usually it's a straight shoot out into Buzzards Bay. We're a little southerly of that, so people shouldn't be going over the grant. They should be going by the grant.
It's in your application, but at least for the public,
Yeah.
if you go over how you're going to get the gear, where it's going to be stored, and how you're going to get it to your site, or out of the site in case of an emergency situation.
We have a private dock, which is definitely going to be an asset, especially in time of a storm, that, you know, that public ramps can be a nightmare, but it's right around the corner when it's not a storm from the Magansett Wrap. So it's easy to drop, get in, get out, and then, like I said, we have the added asset of just being, you know, just a short distance from the house and being able to use our own private ramp. I've contacted 2 individuals about winter storage and storm storage. We have not signed any sort of a contract because at the moment we don't have a grant, but I'm in the preliminary phase of discussing that with them. There's 2 others that the one I'm most interested in striking a deal with is just getting back from his winter address. So in the next week or 2, we'll be sitting down with him, and hopefully that will be the location where my gear is stored, and I can work on it, and in case of an emergency, it will be going.
Do we have any type of a ruling of how many of the shellfish farms we could have in Magansett? I mean, is there a ruling at all, or
That's
is
one
it?
of the major jobs of the new agriculture.
Yes, and
working group.
that was discussed?
That's exactly what the purposes of it is, to come up with a management plan to determine future growth and where they should go and how many there should be.
Are we just on the cusp of that in making a decision on this one? That it just puts us one more over than maybe what that group would decide? Is it a,
That's certainly not the indication I got from Chuck Martinson when he was discussing it, that we were close to a limit, but did think we should, before we move forward with the ones that are not in the pipeline, say, let's hold off, but the ones that are in the pipeline, he was comfortable with moving forward.
do you see the other shellfish farms, as I call them, do you know where they're located?
I do.
And so yours that you're proposing, that you want to have, is not close?
Well, it's close, but it's not, I mean, it's within the state regulations for how close they're supposed to be, near each other. One of the thoughts was by having them in an area, is if the town's sitting there coming out to inspect or wants to be watching things, it's a lot easier to be able to come out and hit 3 or 4 sites right in a row, rather than being one here and one down the coast and one down the coast. We looked at what is allowed, and we've met all the requirements and the distance requirements, and, we.
Are you satisfied with the distance that you have to the next one? Or would you like to have a little more space?
Well, I'd like to have his space, but since he was there first, I can't do that, so, it makes sense that, he's in a very favorable spot. He was there first, so
He
I'm
certainly
getting,
was.
I'm trying to get into the next most favorable spot from my point of view. And in this day and age of electronic navigation, I mean, you can know where you are within, a few yards. So it's not hard to know, he's over there, I'm over here, I know there's the buoy.
And somehow he snuck in without me seeing. I don't know how he possibly did this. But Chuck, instead of me speaking for you, would you mind speaking for yourself on this issue?
Chuck Martinson, you're doing a great job, so I was just going to let you go. We've had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Tonnell. I think just a few quick things I'd like to add. You'll see that it's actually, the application is for over 5 acres. The Commonwealth, the first round, will not be able to actually grant anything over 5 acres. The reason why that's a little bit bigger is because we do have some resource in the area. It gives the Division of Marine Fisheries a little bit of latitude to work with the Tynells when they're actually working together to come up with the site. So, there's going to be some input here from the division as well when they come to survey. As far as the buoys are concerned, it's really no different than a lobster pot, and there's, people have lobster pots all up and down the coast. So, it's not a voluminous amount of buoys that are out there. And the last piece was about the ones that were in the pipeline. Yeah, I mean, these are. People have come to us prior to any real discussions being voted on. So I really think that certainly we need to look at these proposals that are already in the pipeline seriously at this point.
I guess my only personal comment is I remember the first application when we were discussing, and it was all brand new.
Right.
And there was just one person. So I thought, well, that's a lot of space for one person. And it never occurred to me there'd be 2 and then 3 and then 4.
That's why we're starting this working group, and I'm thinking I'm very encouraged by it. I think it's going to work out really well, and we're excited to, it's a good problem to have. It's not a bad problem to have.
Okay.
Well played.
Yeah. Any other questions for either Mr. Martinson or Mr. Tennell? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak on behalf of this project? Anyone like to speak in opposition to this project? Ms. Moran?
Make a motion for approval?
No.
Oh, motion to close the hearing, sorry. Was caught off guard.
We have a motion to close the hearing and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, the hearing is closed. So now we have to decide what action.
Well, we know I like it, so.
I make a motion to approve the project as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the shellfish aquaculture license for Scott Tennell at 5.9 acres in Magansett Harbor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, None? Good luck. We'll see you when you come back.
Right.
Okay.
Moving back in our agenda, we have an application for a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Association for the Coonamessett Restoration Project. Dr. Gladfelter, are you still here? Excellent. Tell us what you're trying to, actually, I guess it's a revision of what you came to us earlier for.
Well, it's not a revision. It's another grant. Maybe we'll get both of them. Betsy Gladfelter Conservation Commission has two things that are different about this grant. Doug very cleverly noticed that instead of it for $500,000, it's for $200,000, and that has to do with the maximum that's allowed by this granting agency. The other difference, and this is just in the text that you read, is that since the last one was to NOAA, there was an emphasis on herring. And just to give you some perspective, the run last year, and it's been counted for the last, now we're 12 years of counts on the Coonamessett, and it has been going up, but it was estimated to be about 70,000 fish. Now, put this in the perspective of 100 years ago, when this was a major herring fishery, it's estimated that there were 1 million fish there. So we're hoping to get that number up. Someone told me he never envisions there'll be a million again, but it would be nice to have several 100,000 for a run. This one is the New England Forest and Rivers Fund, which emphasizes brook trout. And Steve Hurley from our Division of Fish and Wildlife has reintroduced brook trout, and our goal there is to not only have brook trout within the Coonamessett, but have them become salter trout. So some of them will go out into the estuary, and instead of being this big, they'll get to be this big. And one of the big advantages we have here, we hope that the granting agency will appreciate this, is that because it's a groundwater-fed stream, there'll be inputs from springs along the side that basically are refuges for the trout, and especially as with climate change and increased temperatures, trout are very sensitive to higher temperatures. This will be areas for them to live and to spawn. So other than that, it's very similar to what you heard last time, except it's not quite as much money. And if we get both grants, then we'll worry about dealing with that at the time.
Any questions? Mr. Patterson?
If I could, Betsy, at Cape Cod Selectmen's Association's monthly meetings, we keep getting reminded about the trawlers that are coming down from up north, and they're not allowed to trawl within 12 miles until they get past Plymouth with small mesh nets on the order of 2-inch squares. But when they get to Provincetown, they can actually deploy these smaller mesh nets, and they're sweeping down all the way through to Narragansett Bay within 3 miles, or I should say just outside 3 miles. Are you aware of the fact that we are allowing this kind of factory fishing that's actually depleting the herring supply? And
Well, it is a problem because the river herring and the species that live full-time in the ocean, it's thought that they mix, those populations mix.
Yeah.
I am aware of it. What
What you can do about it
is another thing.
Yeah, it just seems like we're fighting so hard, to preserve the environment for them to thrive in, on the freshwater side. But
Right.
we're allowing overfishing essentially on the ocean side. So
Right.
as long as you're familiar with it, this has been raised by Senator Dan Wolf and representatives from Nantucket that are very much concerned about the overfishing of herring and the smaller fish.
Right, I am aware of it. Another part, whenever you work with any organism, you have to worry about the entire life cycle. And there's some young scientists at Hui who their particular interest is in what happens in the ponds. Because even if 1 million fish return to Coonamessett Pond or any pond where they're spawning, if the eggs and the
larvae and the fry and the juveniles don't succeed in that pond, if there's pollution in the pond, then that's another break in the cycle. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the application for the grant from National Fish and Wildlife Association for Cooney Mesa Restoration Project.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Can I
You may speak.
One more thing.
Sure.
And we would like a letter in support, and I've sent the previous letter back with the changes. This is to Julian and Heather, so it's in your office.
Would that be the desire of the board, Mr. Chairman, to have such a letter of support issued?
I'll amend my motion to include that.
Second.
So the motion is to approve this and also to authorize the chair
Letter of
to
support.
write a letter of support.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.
Next item is to approve the warrant for the annual town election on May 17, 2016. And just remember that we have our 9 precincts. We did change voting booths and voting places a few elections ago, so I will announce again, precinct 1 is at Town Hall. Precinct 2 is the Gus Canty Recreation Center. Precinct 3 is the Falmouth High School Gymnasium. Precinct 4 is at St. Anthony's Lodge. Precinct 5 is the North Falmouth Congregational Church. Precinct 6 is the Falmouth High School Gymnasium. Precinct 7, the Wacoit Congregational Church Hall. Precinct 8, Navigator Club. And Precinct 9, Jewish Congregational Community Center. And the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Motion to approve the warrant?
So moved.
Second?
Yep. Question? Ms. Haywood?
Mr. Chairman, I will be out of town at this time. Are you able to tell me, I will be in town next week. Can you tell me how soon I would be able to vote in town hall?
As to when the absentee ballots are available?
Yeah, well, yes. I think I've seen people having on-site voting. I'm not going to be able to receive mail with an absentee ballot.
Usually 2 weeks beforehand, you can be able to vote here on early voting.
All right, thank you.
As it still is an absentee ballot, but it's
Okay.
done here.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We had our vote on that.
Question.
And, yep,
Do we have to vote separately to approve the question on the ballot?
I
don't
believe we do,
recall.
that's what I was going to do.
Oh, you're going to do it.
And specifically, we have on the warrant a question, question 1. Shall the town of Falmouth approve charter amendments proposed by town meeting held on November 9th, 2015, relative to merging the Historic District Commission and Historical Commission summarized as follows? This is an amendment to Article 7, appointed town boards, by deleting Section C 7-9 Historical Commission and amending Section C 7-15 Historic Districts Commission, create a new public body organized under Chapter 40C of the Mass General Laws, which are the powers and duties of the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission, and to be known as the Historical Commission. And so we have to vote to put that on the warrant.
I'll make a motion to put that on the warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Next item is to vote to authorize the town manager to execute the intergovernmental agreement with the EDIC and the Solar Net Metering Agreement with Citizens Energy and related documents. This is something that's been worked on quite heavily by our town council for the past 2 months.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say, as the, also being a member of the EDIC, this is really just the next step in the solar array that the EDIC has been working on with the town, and these are the regular documents that are required in that project.
And I know that we keep getting good news from the state when some legislation was passed about 2 weeks ago that did move this project up onto the approved solar projects, which Was a question that I was happy to hear was moving forward.
It was, and if I might, it's a direct result of very hard work on the part of the EDIC, along with guidance from Citizens Energy, to move very quickly with complicated documents, also worked on very hard by the town and town council and the town manager and the assistant town manager to meet very, very strict deadlines. And it's a really impressive success that will benefit the town to come within these deadlines and to direct financial benefit.
Because I believe projects that are now trying to get on the pipeline
Too late.
it's too late, and they're not going to be accepted.
Right.
Right. We have a motion to authorize town manager to execute the agreement with the EDIC
So moved.
and Citizens Energy.
Second.
A motion is second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none? It's all yours.
Thank you.
We have a request from the USGS to install monitoring wells in town-owned property and on town-owned right-of-ways. Do we have anyone who'd like to present that? Dr. McCobb? No.
Hello, my name is Dennis LeBlanc. I'm with the USGS. Tim McCobb, who's the project chief on this project, is attending a 7-year-old recital. He was considered to be very critical, so I offered to come and do this.
Reasonable priority.
The USGS is partnering with EPA to embark on a project to monitor groundwater quality and groundwater level changes in an area that's going to be sewered. And the ideal place to do that project turns out to be Mara Vista, which is about to be sewered, as you probably know. If you've tried to drive down there recently, it's a bit of a nightmare. So the USGS has designed a network of groundwater monitoring wells that will cut across that peninsula at 4 different streets. To the north, the northernmost street is Iroquois, the southernmost street is Maple Street, and there's a total of 14 sites where we're going to be installing multi-level wells so we can sample the groundwater quality, a shallow well so we can monitor the water table, and a deeper well so that we can get water levels down deeper in the aquifer. That work is set to begin. In fact, we installed one of these wells as a pilot several years ago with approval of the selectmen in the little park between Iroquois and Toledo. And the fresh groundwater at that location was only about 20 feet thick. So when you drill anywhere in Mara Vista and you drill down more than about 20 feet, you hit salty groundwater. So it's a fairly thin freshwater lens. Also containing nitrate concentrations over 10 milligrams per liter. So there's logic behind the soaring, because when you drill and sample water, there's nitrate. We have installed a second well on private property on Reynolds just a few weeks ago, and it confirmed the results of that first site as well. So we have a network of sites that include sites on private property, on town rights-of-ways. We've been working with the DPW on that, and then on some of the town-owned land, in particular along Great Bay Street, which isn't really a street, it's a path, along Great Pond, and then a few more wells near the park. And the intention is to put those wells in the next several weeks. And we have gotten CONSCOM approval for our RDA. It's a negative vote. I don't quite understand that whole thing, but it seemed to work out the way we wanted it. We have been in touch with Mr. Suso on the town commission, so he has those documents as well. So the approval from the CONSCOM was contingent upon the fact that the town would give us the approval to drill there as well. After we install the wells, sometime in late June, early July, we'll do a sampling of all the sites. And many of these wells have multi-ports on them, so we'll be sampling about 150 sites at 14 locations for all the major chemical species, including the nutrients and nitrate, which is really the contaminant of concern. And depending on how that goes, or on the basis of that work, later in the summer, we will be coming back and resampling a smaller set of those, perhaps about 20 or 30 of those points. This is a collaborative effort between an EPA research lab, a USGS research lab, and my office, which is here in Massachusetts. And we're going to be sampling those CECs that you talked about, which are contaminants of emerging concern. And the definition of those are contaminants that are believed to be potential environmental health or public health problems, but there's no standards yet, nor are there real specifics yet on the risk levels and therefore the contaminant concentrations that are allowed. That's why they're emerging as contaminants. So we'll be sampling for things such as pharmaceuticals, personal care product, additives, and some other things that are in that category that we call contaminants of emerging concern. Our idea is that these data will provide a baseline for what's going on now because of all the cesspools and septic systems, and then ideally, over the course of many years, we'll be monitoring how rapidly the aquifer restores itself once you cut off that wastewater source. So the project has Cape-wide implications, in fact, more than Cape-wide implications, which is why we have support also from EPA on this to help us do the work. So we're asking for the town's permission to put in these monitoring wells. They're being put in with what's called a geoprobe direct push rig. It's a very small footprint rig. I have photos of it if you want to see it. It's not much bigger than a truck. And the work takes a couple of days, and there's no disturbance at the surface. All you're left with is one of these road boxes that you see everywhere when you're done. So that's a summary.
Since you raised the question about the nightmare of the construction, I'm going to just talk briefly about that before I get onto your proposal, because we've heard some concern from the public about that also, and concerns that the Board of Selectmen had not actually thought about the planning of this, and that's actually things that we thought about very carefully, about if you're going to make a mess, make a bigger mess for a shorter period of time as opposed to a mess that lasts months and months. And I know that with the gas lines near Jones Road and the Stop and Shop construction, it makes it a hard time, but it really made much more sense to consolidate that. And I think the other question is, why did we do it during public school vacation week? Is it exactly time to do it? The buses and the kids are the ones that we are most concerned about, saying, do it when they're not in school. It may make it harder for the general public, but we'd much rather do it for the schools. And so, since you raised the question for that, I'm going to jump on that at this time. Any questions on the drilling of, for investigating the water? Ms. Moffett?
How many locations do you have on the Cape that you do this?
We have done some work at Mara Vista. I mentioned that earlier. We have monitoring wells like this on Seacoast Shores, on one of the Seacoast Shores Association's right-of-ways at Bayside Road. We have another site on Green Pond, I guess that's Alpha Acapesket, directly opposite the Great Harbors entrance, but on Green Pond. And then we've also worked with the folks that are working for the town at Shorewood. You may, Virginia Valiella and the wastewater committee and that project there. And we also just completed a deep boring at the East Falmouth Elementary School that we just did on March 21st and March 25th with permission from the school department. And we drilled all the way to bedrock. And I wanted to bring in a piece of bedrock for you, and I forgot it. So you can see what's down there at 300 feet. It's a nice solid granite, so Cape Cod, like the rest of New England, is on granite. The problem is there's 300 feet of sand first.
I think maybe, my question is, how many towns other than Falmouth?
We've focused our efforts in Falmouth partly because there's so much activity here. There's a soaring project that's underway, and also I've been working down here for about 40 years on the mass military reservation projects, and so we're really set up to work here. And also we know so many people in town that it's an easy place to work, and also it's probably the most educated town in all of Massachusetts, I'm learning. At the East Falmouth Elementary School, the parents that came out to talk to us all seem to have PhDs in something or another. So it's a great place to do scientific work.
Okay. Beautiful answer.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the request of USGS to install monitoring wells on town-owned property and rights-of-way.
Motion second, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none? Good luck.
We'll keep you
Yes,
up to
we're
date.
glad you're
Thank you.
Nice to see
Thank
you
you.
again.
We'll keep you up to date.
Thank you.
Our next item is one I think it's the 10th time we've seen this, and this, I believe, is the final step in the notice of taking of Courier Road. And this is a notice that needs to be read as hereby given in accordance with General Laws, Chapter 79, Section 7C of an order of taking adopted by the Falmouth Board of Selectmen on April 11th, 2016, relative to two properties abutting Courier Road in said Falmouth. A copy of the order of taking is attached here to as Exhibit A. The taking is an easement of a portion of the land described in the order of taking. The purpose of the taking is for sidewalk purposes or any other appropriate authority specified in Exhibit A, said land to be under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen acting as commissioners of the Department of Public Works. No damages are awarded. The owners of the property affected by the taking are identified in Exhibit A. Any property claiming an interest in said land and seeking damages shall commence an action in the Superior Court of Barnstable, Massachusetts, within 3 years of April 15th, 2016, being the date of the order of the taking was recorded in the Barnstable County Register of Deeds. And we need to have a motion and then sign them.
So I'll make a motion that the order of taking, the notice of the order of taking be approved.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Next, we're moving on to first order of business, the presentation of the fiscal year 2015 audit. Mr. Tony Rosselli. This was some light reading you sent us.
Yes.
Hopefully I can summarize the important parts for you. But thank you for having me. I'm Tony Roselli. I'm a partner with the accounting firm of Roselli, Clark & Associates that's conducted the audit in Falmouth this year. So I'm here before you to present the results. So what I want to focus on first really is the financials, the numbers. You know, where does the town stand? How well is the town doing? And where does it seem to be going? And I'm pleased to report that for the fifth, I believe, consecutive year, the town's hit a home run on the financial side. I'm absolutely amazed by when I look at the results and how much the reserves increase from year to year. It's just either a lot of good luck or some really fortunate management that's forced this onto the town. So this past year, I was fortunate enough to participate in the S&P rating for the town, so I got to learn a lot about what was happening here and why things were happening. And the town did get a AA+. We were hoping for the AAA. It was very, very close, I believe. And I think the S&P needs to see one more year and a couple of improvements in some areas which we can talk about. But the town's, I don't know if everyone has the financial statements, which is the thicker of the documents. So the town's fund balance, if you look on page, if you want to follow along or just listen, that's fine. But when we look at the revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balances, the town's fund balance went from $24 million in 2014, at the end of 2014, to over $30 million at the end of 2015. So there was about a $6 million increase. And I'll focus on what the drivers were. Motor vehicle excise exceeded expectations by about $1 million. Meals excise exceeded expectations by about $300,000. Medicaid, which is kind of a number you don't budget for because it's unpredictable, came in at $500,000. There was some non-recurring revenues, which are unexpected revenues, that came in about $700,000. Departmental receipts were $1.6 million over anticipation. And your licenses were about $300,000. And also on the expense side, you had almost $3 million in turnbacks. So overall, a really, really, really positive results that drove that fund balance to where it is. Now, if you focus on the fund balance, so hopefully I don't lose you, what the S&P wants to know is what part of that fund balance is not reserved. Okay, what is unreserved fund balance? That's where they focus on, and that's the numbers that are important to them. The town's number is $20.3 million. That's in what's called unassigned fund balance, $20.3 million. Now, in that number, we group in all your stabilization funds. So let's talk about the stabilization funds for a second that are in the $20.3 million number. You have a water stabilization fund, which has $500,000. You have a SPED stabilization fund that has $800,000. A capital stabilization fund that has $2.6 million. A health insurance stabilization fund that has $400,000. And then the general stabilization fund, which has $4.1 million. So those were set up for a purpose. And the reason for those is to smooth out any issues going into the future. So if you get a bump in your health insurance unexpected, you have a health insurance stabilization fund. SPED, which is an unpredictable school cost, well, now you've got a stabilization fund that can help smooth that out as costs potentially increase. So S&P really likes those because it buffers the surprises down the road, and that's very important to them. They want to be able to predict where Falmouth is going and if this is the path that Falmouth continues to take. So your unassigned fund balance, am I losing everyone or are you following? Okay, the unassigned fund balance in 2010 was $5 million. It's $20 million now. It's a 400% increase. So it's year over year over year. So right now you're at 17% of expenses. S&P looks for 15% as the top tier. So you're 2% above the top tier. Okay. Other things here. Let's talk about. So your new growth continues to average about $1 million a year. And what had happened back in 8, 9, 10, it dropped to about 4, 5, 600,000. It's now come back up. In 15, it was 1.1. I'm not sure if you have a 16. Anyone has a 16 number? I'm not sure, but for 15, it was 1.1 million. So you were toggling back up to where the new growth was back in about 2003-4. So you've done the whole and coming back, and now I think the town, with the whole wastewater and everything else, is preparing for more vibrant new growth, which is only going to help the reserves, it's going to help the taxpayer, and really make things a lot easier to manage. Your equalized valuation, $11.5 billion. That's the value of the property in Falmouth. Right now is valued at about $11.5 billion. It's the 9th highest in the state. So you got Boston, Cambridge, Worcester, Brookline, Quincy, Barnstable. There's a couple others in there, but you're the 9th highest in the state, behind those other very prestigious communities. And any questions on that? I think that kind of. Oh, one other thing I want to add that came up at the S&P. Your budget performance. So what they do is that if you exceed your budget by between 1 and 5%, that's where they kind of expect you to be. So they give you what's called a score of 2. If you're over 5%, you're in an area where not many communities go. That's when you get a score of 1 on your budget performance. Falmouth has been at 6.8, 7.4, and 6.2 in the last 3 years. One of only 5 communities in the state that's done that. So that was brought up right at the S&P hearing or conference call that we went through. So any questions on?
Keep going.
So the other thing I can mention is the pension.
Mm-hmm.
Right now you're 66.2% funded. So your liability is $176 million, which sounds like a large number, but you've got $118 million in plan assets that offsets the 176. So your liability is about $60 million. It's 66.2%. Again, you're in the top third of the state in terms of where you stand with that liability. You're expected to be fully funded by 2032. And I believe the long-term plan with OPEB, which is your other post-employment benefits, is to begin being more aggressive with that as the pension liability winds down. So that's the financial overview. So no complaints there. This is what I like to see, and makes my job a little easier.
You mentioned the pension liability going up to 2032. What is the state requirement now? I've forgotten that you have to have it fully funded by what year?
2040. So you're eight years ahead of that right now.
So we're way ahead of the deadline.
Mr. Patterson?
Yeah. I think it was in last year's audit, you actually gave us a figure for how much the town spends on educating its children, all of the expenses. And I didn't see it in your report this time. Is it in here that I just...
The education?
Yeah.
Is 40, it's on page 15, 45.3 million in the general fund.
Okay.
45.3.
Yeah. No, but that's just for the school department, is
Yep.
that correct? Yeah. I'm talking about all categories. In other words, the Cape Cod Technology High School, all the contributions of the various towns' departments toward education. You actually had compiled that figure the last time in your report. It was like 56%. And I was curious to know how we were doing.
Oh, okay. Does somebody have the full report? I can get that number. Do you have?
I have the financial. Are you talking about the end of the year report?
No, I think he's talking about, you must have read the management discussion and analysis in the beginning that said what percentage?
Yeah, And as I said, I didn't find it in this year's report. I saw it last year, and I was just wanted to compare.
Was it on a graph, or was it
No,
just
it was
a number?
actually a figure that we
Just a
gave
number,
in the
okay, let me
narrative.
see if I can find it here real quick.
You know, and you can provide that later. I don't mean that you should.
I think I know, I can find it very quickly. Let's see, so education. 54.3% this year, 56% last year.
Yep. Okay, thank you. What page is that on?
You make me open it again. That is on page 8 in the second paragraph.
Thank you.
And for some of the recommendations that are in here, is that something that we should just take from the written form, or is that something you think is appropriate to mention here? I know there's some specific things about the ambulance receivables.
Yeah, I was going to do that next. If you,
Okay, all right.
if you felt that was appropriate, I can do that next.
Please.
I wanted to do a financial overview first.
Great, okay.
Get the good news out of the way first. But the management letter, and we call that the management letter, which would be the observations and recommendations.
Yep.
Mostly housekeeping items. There's no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So we're looking at mostly housekeeping items. And if you can follow along, that's the thinner of the two reports. We can go through these pretty quickly. Student activities, there's a new guideline out there that they have to be audited every 3 years. So we're already working with the school business manager to do those in the fall. So that's being addressed. So in the fall, those will be audited and will be part of the next presentation or report. Also within the school, we wanted to see a better control on the payroll approval process. Right now, we're not seeing a signature from the principal, which the principal is really the department head for each school, so to speak. If you take the school and you divide it into a number of categories. So we'd like to see something there in the future, just for better control on are these employees, school teachers, so on and so forth. Are they working these hours? Is someone else authorizing that? It's not required by law. The school business manager is the ultimate, or the superintendent rather, is the ultimate department head. And but we'd like to see the signatures on the payroll approval process. That's on the bottom of page 2. Any questions on that first page? Okay, on the second page, you brought up ambulance. A few years ago, we brought up that the ambulance receivables were starting to get large and unwindy and somewhat a little bit out of control. There was a conversion made to a new system. They cleaned some of them up. So anything prior to January of 2012, there's still about $40,000 in receivables. I don't believe there's really ever going to be a chance of collecting those. I think they've gone through all the processes. It's probably time to think about looking at those and abating them. I don't think the town does medical liens, which would be you lien someone if they haven't paid, and then when the person passes, it becomes settled in the estate. I don't think the town does that, and most towns don't. It's just something they've chosen not to do. They protect the citizens, provide a service to the citizens. We noticed also the 2012 billing. Since 2012, the receivables are creeping up. So they went up 12% from 14 to 15, but from 13 to 15, they've gone up 64%. So they are starting to get a little higher. So what we recommended is that the fire department start to look at these and see if they can come up with some sort of an abatement policy process that they can bring potential write-offs before you and approve to get them written off. Any questions on that?
I mean, that would also be related to the fees themselves have gone up by, I think, 40 or 50% in the same time period.
Right.
And so if you just do the math on, it's a similar number.
It's percentage-wise, right.
Right. I mean, the percentage is on the dollar amount, not the number of
Right,
bills. And so
right.
You're going to have some go up anyway because the cost is higher.
Right, although what happens is if you don't have an abatement policy in place, and you have 10 outstanding this year, then 10 the next year, now you have 20.
Right.
Now you have another 10, now you have 30, so it keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. So it's good to, at some point, clean them out.
Yep.
And what I find is that really have a standard by which you say this is not collectible. That way you take out the human element of picking and choosing who you want to write off. So You create your 5 or 6 criteria and say they must meet these criteria. If they meet these criteria, then we recommend that they're written off. Okay? Water and sewer receivables, there was a discussion about abatements and how those are done. And what we're finding is that individuals who have access to the system also have access to adjustments and write-offs. So we've made a recommendation that the town look at that situation and that arrangement, because there could be a conflict there. So it's not a clean segregation. Okay, questions on water and sewer? Chapter 90, which is very active in Falmouth. What's happened is you're at the point where there's a surplus in the fund, and that shouldn't happen because it's a reimbursement-based grant. You spend, you submit your reimbursement, and then you receive your grant money. So it should always be negative. The negative should always equal the receivable. So at some point, there's either been a miscoding or the town seeded it at the beginning, which I've seen that in the past, where you actually seed it. Not sure if that happened here in Falmouth or not. But what we're finding is that the receipts that came in July are exceeding the deficit, and we haven't even gone out to August or September. So what I'm thinking has to happen there is some sort of a reconciliation to make sure that what is owed to us is what the deficit is, and try to figure out what that excess is. I think it's probably a combination of seeding it and miscodings. So at least identify, and then the town can decide what to do with that surplus at that point. The options would be to use it for some other road work, to charge off some of the public works. If it's found that it's an error, then you can make the correction back to the general fund.
I have a question, but I'm not sure it's for you, so I'm just going to ask it. I wondered if the town's road program, which was initially funded by town funds and then was funded through betterments, if that's part of the Chapter 90 program or not, or if it's separate.
I don't believe it is.
You mean it's separate?
It
Yes.
shouldn't be. But there could have been some miscoding, because, I mean, I can look at the invoice, and I do a lot of these, and sometimes I've got to really say, is that Chapter 90 or isn't it? They are confusing, so it could have easily been miscoded at some point. But really, the comment here is let's do a reconciliation and find out, what's happened with that fund. It is a pretty active fund, so. And then lastly, single audit, federal government at work again. More changes. What they've done is, at least one good thing, they've increased the threshold from $500,000 to $750,000. So if you received $500,000 in federal funds, you had to get an audit. Now that's gone to $750,000, so it's going to eliminate a lot of the little guys. It's not going to affect Falmouth because you receive far more than $750,000 in federal funds, so you'll continue to have a single audit. But one of the things they've added is that now you've got to set up what's called COSO. I don't know if anyone's heard of this internal control framework. COSO was a popular term back when WorldCom and Arthur Anderson and all of those things were in the news about 15 years ago. And the SEC stepped in and said, this is what you're going to have to do. Well, guess what? It's now catching up with the municipalities. So this is supposed to be in effect for fiscal 17. I belong to a group in the state where we sit and talk about these things every month. A bunch of the CPAs, the DOR, GASB people, and people that do this sort of thing, just to determine how is this going to impact communities. This has happened so fast, no one can possibly be ready for July 1st. So what's happened is we've determined that we're probably going to give a warning the first year, just a small, hey, this wasn't in place, because it's not going to be in place, I don't think, by 17 in Falmouth. And then once it gets to 18, the language will become a little more aggressive. And we'll assist the town in what they need to do. That's what we're doing with all our clients.
I have one other question.
Yep.
Question?
I've forgotten some of this stuff, so I need to get caught up. On the EQV, is that done through a state formula, that number? Is the number a result of a formula that the state has?
The assessors go through and value all of your town. That's the assessed valuation. And the state does their own valuation from the information that the assessors provide the state. So they come up with their own, and you have to be within a certain percentage of that for them to approve your rates so that you can go ahead and set your tax rate. So, yeah, the state doesn't sit there and say, oh, Falmouth, they actually get information, make a very intelligent effort at it. If there's differences, that's when the assessors and the state have to work together to figure out why there's differences. Typically, you like to be at least 92 to 96% of the EQV when you're sending out your tax bills.
Two questions.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. Relative to our OPEB, which is the town's portion of the health insurance that they pay for our retirement system, it started in 1939. We never had an account to hold this money and never put any contributions into it till about 4 years ago. We started putting in $100,000 a year, and at that point we were $84 million in the hole. It seems like it was growing at a steady rate of about $1.25 million a year. So that's like 1 step forward and 12 steps backwards. Over the last year, it increased from 88 million to 117 million. That's over 40%. Did I find a thorn in this rosy picture? And I tried to get an explanation for that at town meeting, and I didn't. Can you perhaps explain that to me? Why the went up 40%? It went up
The increase in OPEB.
8 to 117, $29 million.
The actuarial evaluation is done outside of our audit. And the town, let me just first look at the numbers. So, the 2008, let's go back, there's been 4 valuations. The 2008 was 108 million. The 2010 was 120 million. The 2012 was 88 million, and the 2014 was 117 million. So something happened.
That's what I'd like to know, what the
In
something
that-
was.
In that one there. So I think if you want to find out more answers about that, you'd have to contact the actuary that performed that study there for the 88 million. This will become a much more important number in 2018. For now, it's a disclosure-only item. So we take the report from the actuary, they're licensed to do this, it goes through PERAC, and it gets put into the report. In 2018, this becomes a number on your financial statements, which is why I brought it up earlier. The town has about $275,000, $300,000 in OPEB at the end of 15. Is that the number? Yeah, about 300,000. So Mr. Finneran is correct. I mean, the OPEB has not been addressed as aggressively as you might like. However, 95% of the towns in the state of Massachusetts are in this situation. There's no statutory funding requirement for OPEB. There's been bills out there, but they haven't been passed.
Well, the question I think it actually was about the actuary, the fact that
okay.
the 2 years were.
40% difference.
Oh, I thought you said,
No,
I thought you said explain the rosy picture.
How
so-
how can it go from 88 to 117?
That would have, you'd have to have the actuary.
Right, it's actually a concern that 1 year. The other numbers actually make sense, that it was growing. It was at 104, then 108, then this 88, and then the 117. That 88 seems to be.
It seems like it's an anomaly.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's something to check with the actuary, but not something that would check for the auditor.
I'm not an actuary, so I can't.
Okay, Mr. Finneran, your other question?
I've heard that there's an audit going on at the Housing Authority. Is that anything to do
No,
with you?
no.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the auditor? Mr. Osei?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I just acknowledge, appreciate we have Jennifer and Patty and Tricia and Vicki here tonight with us as well. our financial team, and we appreciate and acknowledge all their fine work, as I think has been further addressed by Tony Roselli's comments here, and we appreciate Tony's assistance over multiple years in this process.
And certainly the rosy picture is due to the congratulations that was owed to our financial team.
Absolutely.
They're doing that well.
And the town manager, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item is a quarterly report from the Chief Dunn of the Police Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Excuse me. Our staffing levels for our 58 funded positions. Currently, right now, we have one vacant position. And that is due to the retirement of Officer Ken Clarkson on February 1st, 2016, after 27 years of service. And everyone in the police department wishes him the best in his endeavors in the future, and he's missed from the police department. Of that 58, we currently have only 54 working along with myself. The reason that being is we have one currently that's been deployed. We're not going to be seeing him again until sometime in December. And we wish him safe returns. I also have 2 officers out on the line of duty. The one we have done some interviews. We did call for a list upon the retirement of Officer Clarkson, and we do have one candidate that we've given a job offer to. However, there's not an academy until July 31st, and we plan on sending that person there. That also being said, we are expecting a retirement July 31st from another veteran officer, and we'll be calling for a list so that we can hopefully send 2 to the academy at the same time to get our number back up to 58 very quickly. Speaking about officers, the 3 officers that graduated last October, like the last time I was here, they were in field training. They were graduates of the Randolph Academy. Officer Cardoza, Officer DuPont, Officer Coyne. They are all solo, out on their own, and doing very well. So we're very, very pleased with that. Our records division, for a period of time, we only had 1 employee in there due to some issues. I'm pleased to announce that the second position has been filled. But with that second position, I've done something different. The records division considered were banker's hours. You could come into records and get your licenses or get reports that you needed between 8 and 4. With the hire of our new employee, the hours have now changed, and I'm pleased to say that I believe it's going to serve the community better and give better customer service. And the hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. now. So people work. People get out of work at 4. People get out of work at 5. And so we're going to change it up and try that for a while. So, but the police department is very happy to have Rebecca Flocker work with us now. And she's done a very good job. She went through a training program with us, and she picked it up very, very quickly, as we knew she would. And so she's working on her own, so that's great. Summer offices and summer employment. I'm also pleased, as of March 1st, 2016, Officer Richard Bradley, he's the officer that was involved in the motor vehicle crash back in June of 27th, 2015. It's very serious. And he was given, from his doctors, a clear release to come back to work should we decide to bring him back. And we are looking to bring him back for the summer. But Richard is fully recovered, and we're thankful for that. It was quite a long haul. And we are also currently looking, reviewing employment applications for summer offices, because as was mentioned at town meeting and things like that, we're going to, in the budget, we're going to have an officer up in Falmouth Heights this year that we haven't had for many years. So Falmouth Heights will have a summer officer. The beaches, we put 2 up at Old Silver Beach because it needs 2. Woods Hole will have an officer, and of course Main Street will have an officer. So we're looking through all the applications now to hire some new people. Our detective division, from November 1st, 2015 to March 31st, we've had 26 undercover buys, 3 warrant arrests, 4 search warrants. We've seized $7,652 in drug seizures. The defendants that have been arrested have been charged with possession of Class B and D, which is cocaine and marijuana, trafficking in cocaine, and drug violations near school zones. These are individuals who have sold drugs or been in possession of drugs with intent to sell near school zones or parks. Type of narcotics purchase, marijuana, cocaine, and heroin. Overdoses. Since the first of the year, as you remember last year, we had over 127 overdoses, 10 deaths. This year, so far, we've had 37 overdoses. 2 of them have resulted in death. 2 overdoses have been reversed by police officers using Narcan. 16 opiate-related arrests during this time period. And we continue, I mean, it is a problem not only in Falmouth, throughout this country. And we continue to work with Gosnell treatment, with a coach and Sergeant Semino, and they go out every other week or sometimes every week. And so far in 2015, we did 58 home visits. 6 victims, or 6 individuals were assisted to treatment through these home visits. Out of all the overdoses, then 38 of the individuals were sectioned, it's called a Section 35, where their families went to court because they wouldn't get help. This program still continues. Since January 1st through March, we've done 9 home visits. One individual requested assistance and was put into treatment, and 11 individuals have been Section 35 by their families for treatment. So this program continues. I believe it's very successful. I mean, if we can save one person, that's great. The more we can save, we're going to continue with it. Related to that.
Chief, before you move, just a quick question.
Sure.
Is that process available? You just would walk into the police station if you were concerned about a family member?
Yes,
Okay.
people do come in and speak with us all the time, and we help them through that process, get them to the courts. And if we can get them to a hospital, that's great, but most of the time, the proper way is to go through the courts to get a Section 35. It's a court order. The person has to come with us at that point. It's sort of being under arrest, but not under arrest. It's a court order to bring them to court. What we would do is go to their homes, physically take them from their homes to the court, where the courts then will evaluate them through medical things and they can send them to treatment.
And it starts by a family member's concern?
Somebody would come to us and say that they need help.
Thank you.
I'm also pleased to announce that we held a opiate summit this past winter. It was held at the Seacrest. It was I believe several of you were there. It was very successful, in my opinion, and everybody else that attended. And it's ongoing. It wasn't just 2 days. It may have just been a 2-day summit. There's a lot of work that was done and is still being done. In fact, I get emails all the time. And then there will be some follow-ups very soon. But just to get an idea, let the public know, it did involve the entire community. I believe the first day that we were there was well over 100 people there. We had people from the board here, the town manager was present, we had state reps, we had people from the clergy were there, people who have lost loved ones to the opiate problem, people who are currently addicted, and very, very successful. That summit, we ended up with 5 basic working groups. Those 5 working groups are what we call the legal side, the legal group. The legal group is consisting of doctors and pharmacists. The illegal group, law enforcement. Schools for education and prevention. The community, and that entails just what it says, the community. People in the community from the chamber to the board. Then we have the post-treatment resource. That's the recovery section and the services. One of the key things that we found, as we all know, and just had the audit report, everything runs on money. So out of that group, those groups elected an individual. We have a 6th group. It's the financial group. And that person will reach out and try to find and seek funding. But as I said, those groups are currently working on their own and will be coming coming back again at one point. And then at one point, I'd even like to do a public forum, similar to what we've done before at the school, so we can answer some of the community's questions as to what we can do to help solve this problem. We also are dealing with mental health issues, which is a huge problem, again, not just in this community, in a lot of communities. Since January of 2015 to April 20th, 2016, the department has gone to 192 calls for services related to mental health issues. Last year, in 15, we received 143 calls for service, and so far this year it's broken down about 49 calls for service. I've done something similar. We've partnered with the Falmouth Human Service, and working with Mark Abbott and Officer Narbonne from the police department. And so far we're playing catch up. So far they've done 71 home visits, and a majority of these homes that they visit, we've already seen the calls for service come down, because now these individuals are getting some service. They're getting to know there were services. They had no idea there were services available to them. So I've got another program that I think is very successful, and we're very compassionate and really want to see it work, because these people need help. Speaking about calls for services, from November 30th, 2015 to March 31st, 2016, I'll give you a whole year here, almost a year. Self-initiated call, those are the calls I've mentioned before, that the officers are on the street and initiate the call, from a motor vehicle stop to checking on a suspicious person. During this period of time, we've got 4,549 calls. Last year at the same time, we had 3,303 calls. Dispatch calls, the ones that get dispatched from the station, 4,998 calls. 15 was 5,056. Total calls so far in this period of time was 9,547 compared to 8,359. That is, call volume is up 14.21% from last year. We have been very, very busy. Get the activity sheets every day, review them every morning, and we're busy. And with some serious things going on.
But the self-initiated ones are the proactive calls as opposed to the reactive ones.
Correct, absolutely. And again, we have a lot of new officers, so they're very eager, and they want to, they're fortunate, and they're pleased that the town gave them an opportunity to have employment and to be a police officer in this town, and that's what they're doing. They're out there being proactive to keep everybody safe. Domestic violence. Call.
Do you have any explanation for why this relatively high increase?
It's a combination of the town's growing, the town, and the people are active, and some of it could be related to drug activity, and the other thing it could be that we have new officers who are just eager to learn and just are out and about doing their job.
So it doesn't necessarily mean more crime is being committed.
No.
It means that there's more response happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like I say, the self-initiated calls could be just finding open windows in buildings also. It doesn't mean a crime has occurred. It just means that they're more active through the night or through the day all the time. But the calls, dispatch calls, even though it seems it's down, the ones that we're having seem to be serious in the fact that the domestics are accidents that take a lot of time.
Would a fully staffed police force also increase our number of
Absolutely will.
calls?
Absolutely will, because as I said in the past, when we were down 14, we were a reactive department, so our self-initiated calls were down. I didn't expect our guys out trying to look for things, because they were just going from call to call to call. So that could be another reason why the call volume is up. Domestics, during January of 2015 to December of 2015, we had 343 domestic calls, 41 restraining order violations, and 227 restraining orders were served. We have an in-house domestic violence advocate that works with our officers, and she was able to serve 185 victims during that period of time. And then January 16 through February, end of February, we've had 58 domestic calls, 3 restraining order violations, and 40 restraining orders served, and she's been able to work with 43 victims at this point in time. Something else that I'm very proud to announce is that we started, as you're aware, we've had, and I'll talk about that in a second, we've had Citizens Police Academies, and we're currently in our 16th. But one thing that I felt was missing was connection with a lot of the youth in Falmouth. So I'm pleased to announce that we started, we called it a Junior Police Academy, and we partnered with the Morse Pond School for the age 5 and 6, which is where we used to have the DARE program, and that has gone by the wayside. So we held our first academy. We had 34 students attend, and what we did was we paired it with the after-school program, so it didn't put the parents out. And it was held 2 days a week, Monday and Wednesdays. Our officers went to the school, or we brought the children over to the police department. Sergeant Cummings, who was the coordinator of the Citizens Police Academy, was also the coordinator for the Junior Academy. And we had 34 students who graduated from that. And it was a lot of fun. And they have a lot of questions, because I went over there several times. But it does bridge a tremendous gap between the youth and the police department, so we're very pleased that we had that. Our 16th Citizens Police Academy is underway right now, and currently we have 26 students attending that. We expect the graduation on January 2nd, 2016. It's a 10-week program. It's held every Thursday from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. And again, it allows the citizens to learn the operations of the police department. I think the best part of it all is I'd like to do the cruiser ride for 4 hours with our officers, so, and that is continuing. Upcoming events. We're also pleased on Friday, April 28th, this coming Friday, I was informed by the Superintendent of Parks, Rocky Gomes, that the police department was selected as the Arbor Day project. So we're going to have students from the Moss Pond School come over and work with Rocky, and there's all sorts of new plantings. And we're really excited about that because I think we needed an upgrade and update, because some of those plants have been there since the building was put there in the 60s. But again, you're familiar with our memorial out front, and a lot of that is going to be really spruced up very, very nicely. They're going to do some plantings, because we have some nice benches that were donated. So they're going to make it like a 3/4 garden out there, so that if you want to go and sit, it really feels like a garden. So we're really, really excited about that. I guess I'll wear an older or dirty uniform that day so I can go out and play in the dirt also. And we're also in the process of preparing for our annual Police Memorial Day, and that will take place this year on Wednesday, May 18th, at the police station at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that's where we remember all those that have fallen, especially Samuel Pierce, who is the only Falmouth police officer, thank God, to be killed in the line of duty here in Falmouth in the 30s. So, and also, let me back up a bit on it kind of works together with both of this. I was also contacted by Dale Tree, Patrick Dale and Brian Dale, who used to be our superintendent, and they want to make a donation to the Cudfield family, or actually to the Deputy Chief, Deputy Sheriff John Robert Cudfield, who just recently passed away. And they're working with Rocky. It isn't going to happen on this day, because the Cudfield family, I believe, is going to be, they couldn't make it at this point in time. However, we're going to have another day, but they're working with Rocky as to where this particular tree will go. So that's going to become part of our memorial also, because even though he was a deputy in Florida, there is a huge connection with the town of Falmouth, with that family, as well as with the police department, as his brother, as his father did work with the Falmouth Police Department prior to going to the state police, and currently his brother, Michael, is a Falmouth police officer. So there is a huge connection, and we're really pleased that they offered that. So that will come soon, and we'll make sure everybody's aware of that. The other events that we're preparing for is the town annual Memorial Day event. The street fair, we're working on the logistics on that. The fireworks, of course, we're working on the logistics on that, and Barnstable County Fair and the road race, so that we're all prepared. Answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Too complete a report for us to have questions for you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I make one comment if I may? I just want to acknowledge and thank Chief Dunn. There are a variety of areas, of course, but in particular, the opiate addiction forum to which he referred, Ed, has been a leader in the Commonwealth in suggesting and really facilitating the development of that program. And I know the town of Falmouth has been looked at by a number of other municipalities in that same area, and the good news continues to unfold on a very, very, very tough problem, which evades any easy answers. But the innovation in putting that together is really a tip of the hat to Chief Dunn. And I do want to note there's a common misconception, in my judgment, that the state government level is where these kinds of things occur. Those of us who've been in this business long enough know that really the experience, the expertise, the innovation is in local government, and Ed's a good example of that, where he has set the tone in this and some other areas as well in terms of moving forward in the 21st century and approaching and addressing challenges, major challenges within the community. And I do want to acknowledge and thank him for that leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the water and wastewater monthly report.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Community's on here, so I want to, we have a drug take-back day. As you know, we have a kiosk, but drug take-back day is April 30th. Probably 10 to 2, I believe. It's on our Facebook page and on our webpage, so if they have any unwanted narcotics, bring them on down. Thank you.
Okay.
Ray, did you hit the projector?
You ready to
Did you hit the projector?
responsibility of licensing?
Can I put Mr. Rafferty on the hot seat while you're getting warmed up? Mr. Rafferty, we had a question at a previous meeting, which I was wondering if you could answer for us about what your, because I know that you have a plan on the hydrants. Someone's concerned about getting them painted, and I know that it is in our works in the next 2 years.
I am so glad I'm here now. So, we have actually, we've got the flushing program going, and we're going to flush in the morning, and then the afternoons we're going to be getting more aggressive about painting hydrants. I like to joke that I got 6 hydrants painted last year, and I'll at least double that amount this year. But no, the hydrants do need to be painted. We put together a compressor, a little trailer, so we're geared up and ready to go on this, and so we're going to get started. The intention right now is to come behind where we do the flushing, so as we come through an area and flush it and check certain things, then we're going to come in behind that and paint those hydrants in that neighborhood and check all the data on it against the database. And again, so as we come through, one will follow behind the other, and over time we'll be making a dent in it.
I just want to make sure we're showing people that this is happening.
And just a question, are they going to be color-coded, the paint, in terms of the size of the mains?
There is a color coating associated with them. They're generally painted white, and the bonnet, that's the top part, the color refers to the available capacity of that hydrant. There's blue, I'm looking at Ray because he remembers this better than I do, green, yellow, and red. Red's not as good, blue's the best in terms of capacity.
Thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
My understanding that there's somewhere over 3,300 hydrants in this town, and anybody can look around and see they haven't been painted or maintained properly in the last 20 years. First off, I'd like to know why that is, and second off, I'd like to know what the schedule is, projected schedule is to get these things up to snuff like the towns that surround us.
Okay. Thank you, that was just answered.
I
Mr. Jack?
think it was.
I don't know the light switches to hit for this. Thank you and good evening. This is the midpoint on both of these projects. They're both actually over the midway point, so that's good news for tonight. For Long Pond, started out at 41 million. We're at 40.17 right now. 46% complete based on dollar values, but in actual production and time of year, it's over 50%. Expect to be completed May of next year. Potential change orders in the $430,000 range. A lot of that is associated with the firing range remediation. So this is the graph up in the right-hand corner. The green figure is the original contract value at 40.9. The dark blue number at 40.1 is the adjusted contract value. Excuse me, and down on the chart with the red line and the yellowish 17 million is what has been paid out. So all three lines are following each other fairly closely. The straight line, blue line, is the adjusted contract value. The lighter blue or greenish line with the dots on it is the original contract value. So we had 8 structural concrete pours, 851 yards of concrete, so it was actually a big month. They're starting the raw water pump station foundation now. Forming and pouring the walls for the ozone building, the backwash, and the clear well tanks. I'll be able to show you those on photographs. Plant masonry and retaining walls are nearly complete. So from the masonry perspective, last month you saw the structural steel was going up, and of course in between the structural steel you have to build the walls, and those are going to be masonry walls. They're not poured walls like the first floor foundation was. And a lot of the mechanical piping is now being started. So the pictures on the right-hand side, the pipe gallery up top, you can see those projections coming out of the floor. Those are going to be for mechanical equipment and piping. Then on the one on the bottom, this is back near the DAF or dissolved air flotation tanks, and that's a large pipe there being put in place along with a blue thing sitting on top is a geared valve. So that's just part of the process piping. So you're only seeing one piece here. You're going to see a lot of process piping throughout the building as the project moves forward now. This was the front of the plant in February, so this would be standing to the northeast and looking southwest. And this is the same rough depiction that we have at the end of each of these presentations with where Long Pond would be in the future. So that's where we were back at the end of February, and this is where we are now. So here you can see the retaining wall that's being built in the front. To the left of that is the pump chamber area. To the right is the rest of the process building with filters and the dissolved air flotation. And all the way up on the upper right corner, you can barely see it, is the garage area. This is another picture to the left of that retaining wall showing the pump chamber area. To the left of that pump chamber area below ground is where the backwash tanks are being constructed. This is what the rear of the building looked like in March, and this is what it looks like now. So they made considerable progress, especially on the masonry and the walls. This is where we were in March. This is facing the pump chambers from the southeast, looking northwest, and down in the lower right where you see that grid pattern, those are the forms for the concrete on the backwash tanks. And this is where we are now. The backwash tanks are virtually complete. Up where you see the yellow guardrail up there, that's a lot of rebar on the top for pouring the upper slab. And then you can see all the scaffolding up on the pump chamber area, which I have another photograph that shows that a bit better. But that's the scaffolding for the masons to be able to put the masonry up. And at the bottom of that, you can see the rebar on the upper portion of the backwash chambers. This is what the ozone building looked like back in March, and this is now. So this is the exterior of the building, and not only is the exterior wall on this side done and the other side was formed as of last week, also some of the interior walls were being completed as well. This picture has the ozone building on the right side, the retaining wall on the left side, and this is the rear of the building. So just to give you a sense of scale, that thing in the center there is going to be a conventional doorway. So you can see that that retaining wall and the ozone building are rather large. raw water pump station. It doesn't look like much. Most of the effort's been focused on the building. But last month, we had the rebar in place for the final pour. And on the right-hand side at the bottom, that's what you see today. So the final pour on the wet well is done. Now they're going to be working around that to build the foundation and put the actual pump station building up. Pump chamber and tanks, this is looking from the east to the west, straight into the pump chamber area. So on the left, for last month, the upper photograph, you can see that the backwash tanks on the lower left-hand side still had a lot of the forms up and the rebar up for the walls. The one on the right-hand side at the bottom shows that the concrete structure for the backwash tanks is just about complete. And for all those little openings that you see on the right-hand side, that's rebar going up for the clear well tank. Clear well tank will extend all the way forward, approximately twice as far as the backwash tanks, all the way up to where you see the edge of that white pad on the right-hand side. That's a floor pad for the backwash tanks. So the capacity there is going to be 800,000 gallons for the clear well. This is something of the plant interior. So the center piece here is looking from the west to the east, and where you see the wood framing, that's over the dissolved air flotation tanks. And then the wood framing further on in the picture near the other end of the building is where the filter areas are. On the lower left is just some scaffolding going up on the interior with a mason up there putting up some of the block walls. And then the other picture on the bottom half is just another picture of the inside from the south, from the northeast, from the northwest looking southeast. This is another shot of the backwash tanks as they stand today. So you can see where the backwash structure itself is just about complete. I apologize for the basement area photograph. It looked great on my computer, but it obviously didn't come out so well on this. But this was actually to show you in the basement area where a lot of the process piping is going. On the left-hand side of that picture, you can see a maroon fitting. That's a 30-inch fitting sitting there. So there's a number of fittings that are already being placed in that room in order to put the process piping in. On the right picture, on the bottom right, is the chemical feed area. So there are going to be several tanks like this installed for the various process chemicals that will be used for the plant. So we'll have sodium hypochlorite, potassium permanganate, and ozone, and injected air, and polyaluminum chloride. And this was the firing range remediation. It's really not much to see. You have to try to remember that back then, this was a gravel pit, so they dug down until they hit groundwater, so therefore it's no longer good as a gravel pit. But this was actually the western edge of the embankment of that excavated pit area. So as a police firing range, they had a perfect embankment to be able to shoot into. So they put targets in front of it where you see that heavy equipment now, and then the embankment behind it would be able to catch the bullets. So we had to excavate a lot of the dirt out of the embankment area and then put it in the screener down at the bottom there. That takes out the lead bullets, put them in a container, dispose of them, and then we have these soils that you can see being piled up on the right-hand side where you see that white fabric area and a pile of dirt. That's soil that's being taken off of the embankment, piled up. We had to wait for our final testing to come through, which Mr. Rafferty indicated that we got our final result today. So the material will be moving out of there starting this week. Part goes to New Hampshire and part will be going to Bourne on that. But everything was working out very well on that remediation project. And once we're done, we don't have a 5-year remediation effort that we would normally have to go through if we didn't do the project all at once. So this was very beneficial for us to be able to do it at this time. That was it for the plan.
Anderson, can I ask a quick question? On the pump chamber, I noticed that they actually have completed the pour of the foundation, and it was completely full of water. I was curious to know what they were testing. I was there on a walk around the pond this past week. I was surprised to see it just literally topped off with water inside.
They test the tanks for water tightness.
Okay.
All of the tanks. So the filters, the DAF units, all of them will be tested for water tightness. So for the Little Pond Sewer Service Area, original contract cost was $20.4 million. Adjusted value right now is about $300,000 above that, $20.7 million. Although this says as of March, this is the beginning of March, it was 45%. The actual work in the street is 55% complete at this point. So we've spent $9.2 million, expected to be completed by June of next year. Potential change orders at this time, about $300,000. One of the larger sums, and you'll see it on one of the slides, has to do with the paving of spring bars, because spring bars went through such extensive work that we had no choice but to repave the whole road. So $160,000 of that is Spring Bars Road alone. So from a cash flow perspective, 20.41 was the original budget, and that's a blue line that's just under that greenish line. They're very close together. 20.72 is the adjusted budget, so you can see that there's virtually no difference between the two. This is in the 10th month at the beginning of March, but we're near the end of March or end of April, so this is actually the 11th month, and paid out almost 50% of the value at $9.27 million. So they're working in the Mara Vista area now. Falmouth Heights area is complete. The pressure mains and the gravity mains and the connections are ready in the Falmouth Heights area, so virtually all of the work is either on Main Street, Mara Vista proper, and or the other streets in Mara Vista. Spring Bars Road, they completed the main. We already did the base coat paving. I have a photo to show you on that. Route 28, I'm sure that everybody's aware that Route 28 is being worked on. So they have a gravity and a force main to install. They are putting one on top of the other, and that goes from Alphonse Lift Station, which is down near where the Express Mart is, at the administration building, all the way down to the Admiralty Motel. At the present time, they're about down at Cumberland Farms. They just passed the other half of the driveway at Cumberland Farms. Lift stations, we had two. There's the mall.
Any idea of the timetables to when that's going to wrap up?
They have till Memorial Day. They're making really good progress, so our hope is they're going to finish up maybe early. By maybe early, that could be anywhere from a week to a week and a half early. That's being hopeful. But they actually would have up until Memorial Day, because it's critical to complete that component, because there are two mains coming from those lift stations, so they can't activate anything until those are in service. So that's why the effort on Mara Vista and Route 28.
I did hear a question on the Mara Vista area as to whether the Great Bay Street, the blocking off that street, which we did last year at their request, could potentially, for a short period of time, just to make it another way of getting around there, was something we would consider.
It shouldn't impact them that much after this week, because they had started at Randolph and they went south down to Iroquois. By the end of this week, they should be pretty much done with that, and then it'll be taken off from Randolph and going north. So it'll pretty much alleviate that. And quite frankly, we did look at that possibility, but trying to have alternating traffic would have been totally impossible. That Great Bay is really only capable of taking one vehicle at a time. So you would, if you did open it up for any kind of traffic at all, it would have to be a one-way traffic pattern. You couldn't have traffic going both ways, or they'd just be butting heads and pushing each other off.
After receiving some concerns, I did drive down there and talk to a guy who was blocking off the road, who very eagerly stopped me from going, and then explained, now if I needed to, he would figure out a way to get me where I needed to go, but if I didn't need to, get on out of there and move away.
Right. So we have the two lift stations. Both of them are structurally complete. The mall lift station is actually ahead of the Alphonse lift station. So the mechanicals, a lot of mechanicals done at the mall, working on the electrical and the architectural on both of them, and the mechanical on the Alphonse lift station, and the Robbins Road lift station, which is the one at the head of the harbor, that's undergoing an upgrade. So for Mara Vista Avenue on the trunk main, which I just mentioned, they're currently working on Mara Vista from Randolph down to Iroquois. Iroquois is the separation point between the low pressure and the gravity system. So that is this month and possibly going into May, but we're hoping they're going to be done maybe by the end of the week. And then they'll be going north of Randolph, and that'll go through May and June. The connector mains, meaning that once they get the main in, the primary main on Mara Vista, Then they have to come out on each of the side streets north of Iroquois and bring all of those mains into and connect into that main. So even after they get that main done, that'll be the complete shutdown, but 1 or 2 days a week, they'll have to have limited traffic going into June in order to make those connector mains. Route 28, we're going from Alphonse Street down to the Admiralty. Falmouth Heights paving restoration started today down in the Grand Ave area. So they'll be working on that now for the next couple weeks. And I already mentioned about the lift stations, and I see I have a typo there on electrical. I really do know how to spell it. So this was on Mara Vista at Harrington. What the machine's doing there is installing sheathing alongside the trench boxes. This is Mara Vista looking southward after a day's work where they paved the area, so it's a little bit difficult, but virtually everything you see from the bottom of the photo out to the end of the cones was paved where they had trenched it open. This was spring bars in March. Up in the top center up there where you see that truck, right behind that truck is the mall lift station, so you can see that there wasn't a heck of a lot left to Spring Bars Road. But this is Spring Bars now. This is just the base coat down. We didn't want to proceed and do the final coat because we're still going to have a lot of heavy equipment running in back and forth over the summer. So this way it gets everything ready for the summertime, but they'll be putting the final coat on in the fall. And this was up by the Express Mart, putting in the gravity main. That's a 8-inch gravity going in there. And then this was restoring the trench at the end of the day. And these were the two lift stations, Alphonse and the mall lift station. For the sewer service area, you can see that the blue area down on the bottom with the blue and the yellow, that's Falmouth Heights, and that is complete. Up at the top on the Mara Vista Peninsula, the southern portion you see there on the right side of the screen with a lot of the blue in it, those are the low pressure mains where you see the yellow. And the blue are where they had the gravity connections to the property line in. And then within those circled areas, I circled those so that you'll be able to see the difference between the two slides, because it's not quite as impressive as it usually is, because it goes from some blue to a lot of blue when I switch the slides. And in this case, because they're on Mara Vista doing a very deep main and Route 28 doing a very deep main, it's kind of a little more difficult to see their progress, but it is visible. So here now you can see that they've done a number of other gravity mains up in that circled area, as well as a lot of the connections going up to the curb. And then the circle down on the lower left is the main coming out of the lift station and heading down to 28. It has to get to the right edge of that circle where you see that large blue area there. That's down where the Admiralty is. So that's where they are. They're almost halfway down, and they have to get to that other area. And fortunately, they're through the deepest area now of the trenching, I'm pretty sure. So it shouldn't be too bad. But any questions?
Did you want to talk about what the future plans for paving, or is that for a future presentation?
No, that's what we're doing in Mara Vista. We have a number of roads, and I don't have a slide to show it, but a fair portion of Lake Lehman and Jericho are going to get a mill and an overlay, and that is due to the depth of that main was so deep, the width of the trench was so wide that it disrupted most of the road. Worcester Court from Lake Lehman north will be milled and overlaid, and that should be able to connect almost up with where the state's going on their project. We're holding off on the portions of Worcester Court going south because both sides had gravity mains, and then the east side also had a low pressure main. But we're holding off on those paving now until later on in the fall, because we have to do Mara Vista anyway, or Mara Vista, we have to do
Worcester Court?
Worcester Court. Where did I come up with? I got Mara Vista on my mind. But we have to do Worcester Court anyway on a bigger scale, so we're pulling it off now to see what we're going to do with that whole area down there to begin with. The low pressure area, there are 5 streets down there because they were narrow and had poor road surfaces. Those are getting milled and overlaid. And then the rest of the area is going to have a trench restoration. And then we're going to be taking a look at the Mara Vista area proper. Most of the southern streets were in pretty good shape, and the trench was minimal. So trench restoration on those will be sufficient. In the upper area, we're taking a look now to see what the differential is going to be able to try to do mill and overlay on the gravity roads on the upper portion, because that too is going to be very disruptive for those roads. And unfortunately, the roads were in fair to poor shape to begin with. So we're trying to put back as much as we can under the project, but it's not a paving project. It was a sewer project, but we are trying to give them as much as possible under the project.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. 5-minute break. We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
5 minutes.
We have been here since 5:30.
We're over.